The sound of the hammer came again sharp and wrong in the quiet of the morning. I was flipping pancakes, the smell of butter and cinnamon filling the kitchen, when I heard Eddie's voice from upstairs. "Ma'am, you need to come see this. Right now." Something in his tone froze me. He wasn't calling because of a wire or a circuit. He sounded like a man who'd seen something he wished he hadn't. I turned off the stove, the pan still hissing, and climbed the stairs slowly. My knees stiff, my chest already tight. Eddie stood by the bedroom wall with dust on his shirt and his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson," he said softly. "I didn't mean to break anything, but—" He pointed at the wall. The plaster had been cut open cleanly. Behind the insulation was a hollow space. Inside that space were neat rows of plastic-wrapped bundles, money stacks of it, thick rubber bands holding them tight. Beside them lay 2 passports and a photograph that made my knees buckle. Marcus, my husband of 40 years, was in the picture, his arm around a woman I had never seen before. They were smiling. In the background was a beach I'd never been to. "This was behind the wiring," Eddie said quietly. "I thought it was some kind of safe at first." I couldn't speak. My hand reached for the photo on its own. His face, so familiar, looked younger there, freer. There was love in his eyes, but not for me. The smell of plaster dust mixed with the scent of the pancake still lingering on my clothes. It hit me then how ordinary the morning had begun. The kind of morning you never think will break your life in half. "Do you want me to call someone?" Eddie asked. "Your husband, maybe?" I shook my head. "No, he's not home. He left early. He always left early lately." I stared at the photo again and noticed something that made my stomach turn, the date printed on the back. It was from the same week as David's funeral 7 years ago. The same week I buried my son Marcus had been smiling on a beach with her. I couldn't breathe. My hand clutched the frame of the wall to steady myself. My heart wasn't racing. It was slowing down, heavy, deliberate, like it didn't want to keep beating in this truth. Eddie shifted uneasily. "Mrs. Henderson, there's more." He reached deeper into the hollow and pulled out an envelope thick with papers. I opened it with shaking fingers. Bank documents, account numbers, copies of my signature, except they weren't mine. My name written over and over again in a handwriting that was almost mine, but just wrong enough to make my skin crawl. "You should sit down," Eddie said, pulling over a chair. "No," I whispered. "If I sit, I might never get up again." The sunlight streaming through the curtains hit the picture of Marcus and that woman. For a moment I could see their reflection on the glass of our wedding photo still hanging by the bed, 2 lives overlapping, one real, one rotten. I thought about all the nights he'd sat at this very spot pretending to fix the wiring, the quiet hum of his tools, his calm voice when I'd asked what he was doing. "Just maintenance, baby. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." That's what he said when David died, when the insurance papers came, when he started locking the bedroom door. And I hadn't worried. I had prayed instead. I had cooked, cleaned, forgiven, believed. Now the truth was right there behind the wall, as real and ugly as the money and the forged papers. "Should I patch it up for now?" Eddie asked hesitantly. I looked at him, my voice barely steady. "No, leave it open. Let the air in. Let it all breathe." He nodded, stepping back. I stood there staring at the hole, the sunlight hitting the bundles of cash until they gleamed like something alive. For 40 years I had shared this room with a man I thought I knew. I had shared his silence, his prayers, his bed, his grief. I thought his secrets were buried with our son. I was wrong. Sometimes evil doesn't come from outside the house. Sometimes it sleeps right next to you, waiting for the right wall to break. The morning after Eddie left the house felt different. It wasn't just the hole in the wall. It was the silence that followed me from room to room, a silence that no longer felt peaceful, but watchful. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my untouched coffee, the steam curling upward like a ghost of routine. For 30 years, this house had been my sanctuary. I had painted every wall myself after retiring from the school district, choosing soft colors because Marcus said they brought calm. I had believed him. Everything in our home had meaning until now. When Marcus came home that afternoon, he looked the same as always, pressed shirt, polished shoes, that familiar cologne that used to make me feel safe. He kissed my forehead, called me baby girl like he always did, and asked what was for dinner. My throat tightened. I couldn't ask him. Not yet. Instead, I watched him move around the kitchen, humming softly, opening the fridge, as if he hadn't hidden a double life inside our wall. "How was your day?" he asked. "Quiet," I said. He smiled, unaware that I'd spent the entire morning memorizing every lie he'd told me. After dinner, he went to the garage to check the generator. I knew what that meant. Another excuse to stay away. I followed him quietly and stopped by the doorway. He wasn't checking anything. He was on the phone, his voice low but urgent. "I told you, Lena, not yet. She suspects nothing. Just give me 2 more weeks." My knees nearly gave out. The sound of her name, the woman from the photo, made bile rise in my throat. I backed away before he saw me. In our bedroom that night, I lay awake beside him pretending to sleep. His breathing was steady, calm. Mine wasn't. I stared at the ceiling and thought of David. Our boy had died at 28, a highway accident they called instant. Marcus had never cried, not once. I thought it was strength. Now I wondered if it was guilt. After David's funeral, Marcus had handled all the paperwork, the insurance, the house repairs. I had been too broken to notice what he might have done with the money. I remembered Monica, our daughter, calling last week. She'd said, "Mama, are you and Daddy okay? You sound tired lately." I told her I was fine. I always told her that, because I wanted her to believe in family and love and things that held. Now I wasn't sure I did. The next morning, Marcus left early again, saying he had a church maintenance project. I walked into the bedroom and looked at the open wall Eddie hadn't patched. The cash was gone. So were the passports. The space was empty, swept clean like it had never existed. My hands started trembling. He knew. Somehow he knew I'd seen it. A cold calm settled over me. If he could hide money and a mistress, he could hide anything. I called Eddie. "Can you come back today? There's something wrong with the wiring again." My voice cracked on the lie. "Of course, ma'am," he said gently. "Are you safe right now?" That question startled me. I looked around the room. The flowers on my nightstand were fresh. My husband's Bible was still open on his dresser. Everything looked safe. But nothing was. When Eddie arrived that afternoon, I didn't let him go upstairs alone. I needed to see if Marcus had hidden more. As we climbed the stairs, a draft came from the cracked drywall. It whispered against my skin like the house itself was trying to warn me. Eddie turned his flashlight on and frowned. "There's more wiring behind here," he said. "But it's not connected to the main system." "Then what is it?" I asked. He looked at me slowly. "Something someone didn't want you to find." Eddie's flashlight beam moved along the seam of the drywall, catching small dust particles that glimmered like ash in sunlight. He pressed a knuckle against the wall. A hollow echo answered back. "It's not power lines," he murmured. "Something else runs through here." My stomach twisted. What kind of something else? He hesitated, tapping again, his brow creasing. "Could be camera sensors. Wires like this aren't factory installed." I felt the air drain out of the room. Cameras. For what? Eddie crouched and gently pulled a thread of cable free. It wasn't standard electrical wire. It was thin black, meant for surveillance. My mouth went dry. "Ma'am," he said softly, "someone wired this wall to record." I turned toward our bed, our nightstand, our framed wedding photo. The idea that every word, every prayer, every sigh could have been captured made my skin crawl. I reached for the photo, my hand trembling. He was watching me. Eddie didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence did. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room with the TV muted, watching the flicker of streetlights crawl across the ceiling. My husband had built a trap inside the place I called home. Every nail in this house suddenly felt poisoned. When Marcus came home near midnight, he looked exhausted but calm. "Power's back on," he said casually. "Told you I'd fix it." I forced a smile. "You did, huh?" He poured himself a drink, his back to me. I watched him, the deliberate way he stirred the ice, the easy confidence of a man who believed no one had seen behind his mask. "Marcus," I said quietly, "what exactly are you working on in the bedroom walls?" His hand froze mid-stir. "What do you mean?" I met his eyes. "Eddie found something." His tone sharpened instantly. "You brought him in again?" He said the wiring wasn't right. He slammed the glass down. "You don't trust me to fix my own damn house now." I swallowed hard. "I just wanted to be safe." "Safe," he repeated, laughing once dry and cold. "You think a stranger with a tool belt can keep you safe?" "Maybe he can," I whispered. His jaw clenched. For a moment his face changed. Something cruel flickered there, gone too fast to name. He turned and walked away. The next morning he acted as if nothing happened. He kissed my cheek, made me coffee, and told me he loved me. It was almost enough to make me doubt myself almost. Later that day, I went through his drawers. The bottom one had always been locked. Inside, under old receipts, I found another envelope, more bank papers, more transactions under my name, and tucked inside a photograph of David, our son, standing beside Marcus in front of that same beach. Only this photo had been torn in half. David's face was scratched out. My vision blurred. I sank onto the bed, clutching the half picture. Marcus had told me that beach photo was lost years ago. Now I knew why. He'd replaced it with her. When I heard his car in the driveway, I hid the envelope under my sweater and rushed downstairs. My pulse was hammering my mouth, dry as chalk. He walked in with that same steady smile, the one that had once meant safety. "Everything all right, baby girl?" he asked. "Everything's fine," I said, and it almost sounded like the truth. But inside, something hard had settled. I wasn't just afraid anymore. I was angry. Anger was warmer than fear. Anger meant I was still alive. That night when Marcus finally fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at him. The man I had loved for 40 years looked peaceful, almost saintly. His lips moved slightly as if he were dreaming of something pleasant. Maybe her. Maybe of a life where I didn't exist. My mind replayed the years like a broken film reel, birthdays, anniversaries, the night we lost David. Every memory now looked tainted, like it had been filmed under false light. I thought of the cameras hidden in the wall and wondered how long he'd been watching me, studying me. For what? For control? For money? For guilt? The house creaked and I flinched. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. For the first time, I wondered if I was in danger. If Marcus could lie about his affair, his finances, even his son's insurance. What else could he do? I slipped out of bed quietly and went to the living room. The moonlight fell through the blinds, silver stripes across the floor. On the mantel was a framed photo of our whole family, Marcus, me, David, and Monica. I traced David's face with my finger. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "Mama should have seen it sooner." The next morning I made a decision. I called my daughter. "Monica, sweetheart, are you busy this week?" I tried to keep my voice light. "No, Mama." "Why? Everything okay?" I hesitated. "Just thought maybe you and the little one could come stay for a few days." "Sure, I'd love that," she said, and her voice softened. "You sound tired, Mama. You getting enough rest?" I smiled faintly. "I will once you're here." When I hung up, I caught sight of Marcus watching me from the hallway. He had that unreadable expression again, the kind that always made me feel like I'd said too much. "Who was that?" he asked. "Monica," I said. "She's visiting?" He nodded slowly, then walked away, but I saw his jaw tighten. He didn't like surprises, especially not ones he couldn't control. That evening, I went to check the wall again. The wires Eddie found were gone, cleaned out like the cash. Marcus had erased every trace. I didn't even hear him come in until his reflection appeared in the mirror beside me. "Why are you looking at that wall again, Ruth?" he asked softly. I froze. He only called me Ruth when he was angry. Just making sure the leak didn't come back, I lied. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You don't have to check things I've already fixed. I just like to understand what's happening in my own house," I said, turning to face him. His eyes were dark, sharp, calculating. "And I like a wife who trusts her husband." The room went still. I could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fan, the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. I met his gaze without blinking. "Then maybe you should try being one." His face hardened, but he said nothing. He turned and left the room, his footsteps measured, quiet, dangerous. That night I locked the bedroom door for the first time in years. I slept with the phone beside me. The next day, Monica arrived with her son, little Andrew. The moment they walked in, the air felt lighter. Grandma Andrew shouted, running into my arms. His laughter broke something open in me. I felt safe for the first time in weeks, but only for a moment. Because when I looked up, Marcus was standing in the doorway watching us, smiling too wide. "Well, look who's here," he said, and there was something in his tone that made my stomach twist. Something that said, "I know why you called her." Monica's visit was supposed to bring peace, but instead it felt like walking through a house wired with secrets. Marcus put on his best husband and father act, laughing too loud, hugging too tight, and cooking Sunday breakfast like nothing in the world was wrong. To anyone else, he was the picture of a loving man in his 60s, silver at the temples, hands still strong from years of carpentry. But I could see the cracks now, the way his eyes lingered too long on the locked bedroom door, how his smile disappeared when Monica wasn't looking. "Daddy, this is the best bacon I've ever had," she said, giggling like a child. He winked. "Still got my touch, huh?" I forced a smile. My stomach churned with every word. After breakfast, Monica took Andrew out to the backyard to play, and Marcus followed them, pretending to fix the garden lights. I stayed in the kitchen washing dishes, but my eyes never left the window. He was watching them. I could tell the tightness in his posture, the way his hand hovered near the light switch, as if he were controlling something unseen. When Monica bent down to tie Andrew's shoe, Marcus glanced toward the house, toward me, and our eyes met. I don't know what he saw in my face, but his smirk vanished. That afternoon, Monica sat beside me in the living room, the sunlight soft across her face. "Mama, is everything okay between you and Daddy?" she asked gently. "You've been different." I hesitated. How could I tell her that her father wasn't the man she believed in, that the man who once carried her on his shoulders now carried deceit in every gesture? "I'm just tired, baby," I said finally. "You know how it is at my age." She studied me, unconvinced. "If you say so." Then lowering her voice, she added, "You know I worry about you here alone, especially since what happened with David." David. His name was a blade every time. The air in the room shifted. "I miss him every day," I whispered. Monica reached for my hand. "We all do." She paused. "Daddy doesn't talk about him much." I looked toward the window where Marcus was now trimming roses with methodical precision. "No," I said quietly. "He doesn't." That evening, Marcus poured wine, insisting on a family dinner like old times. Monica laughed oblivious while Andrew played with his toy cars on the rug. Marcus kept refilling my glass even when I pushed it away. "Come on, Ruth," he said with a grin too smooth. "Just a sip. For the old days. I've had enough." "Suit yourself," he murmured, sipping his own. But his eyes were studying me, measuring. I remembered the hidden chemicals Eddie had described inside the wiring systems designed to release things unseen. What if this wasn't just wine? What if nothing in this house was what it seemed? When Monica tucked Andrew into bed later, Marcus followed me into the kitchen. The silence was thick. "You've been quiet, baby girl," he said, his tone deceptively soft. "You upset about something?" I faced the counter, gripping it until my knuckles ached. "You tell me, Marcus. Should I be upset?" He stepped closer, his breath hot against my neck. "You've been digging where you shouldn't. Bringing that plumber back, calling our daughter without telling me." His voice dropped low and venomous. "You forget who keeps this roof over your head." I turned slowly. "You forget who built it with you." For a moment, the air between us was pure hatred and heartbreak braided together. Then he smiled cold as marble. "Don't start something you can't finish." He walked out, his footsteps fading into the dark hall. I leaned against the counter, my hands shaking. Upstairs, I heard the faint click of the guest room door, Monica locking it. Maybe she'd seen it too, the monster behind her father's calm. Maybe it was time I stopped pretending this house could still be called home. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning. Every sigh of wind outside felt like the house exhaling secrets it had held too long. Marcus's words kept replaying in my mind. "Don't start something you can't finish." That wasn't a threat wrapped in love. It was a promise wrapped in history. For 40 years, I'd mistaken his silence for strength. Now I knew it was control. When dawn finally came, I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my wedding ring. The gold had dulled over time, but I had never taken it off. I twisted it once, twice, and then slid it free. My hand looked strange without it, lighter, but emptier too. Marcus came down in his robe, whistling. "Morning sunshine," he said, like the night before hadn't happened. "Sleep well." I didn't answer. He poured himself coffee, his every move deliberate, practiced. "You look tired," he said. "I keep telling you to take those vitamins I got." I stared at him. "The ones in the brown bottle." "Yeah, you've been taking them right." My blood went cold. I lied. "Of course." He smiled, satisfied. "Good girl." Monica and Andrew came downstairs a few minutes later. The boys' laughter cut through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. "Grandma pancakes," he shouted. I forced a smile and got to work mixing batter. The smell of butter and sugar filled the air again, but this time it made me nauseous. I caught Monica watching me with a faint frown. Then she mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the pan. After breakfast, Marcus offered to take Andrew to the park. Monica hesitated, glancing at me, but I forced a smile. "Go on," I said. "It's good for the boy." When the door closed, I turned to her. Monica listened to me carefully. "There's something wrong in this house." Her face paled. What do you mean your father's been hiding things? Money, documents, cameras. I think he's been planning something worse. Monica shook her head, refusing to believe it. Mama, that's crazy. Daddy, he would. My voice cracked. He already has. I told her everything. The hidden cash, the fake papers, the wiring Eddie found. Her face went from disbelief to terror. You think he's dangerous? I think I don't know who he is anymore, I said. And I need your help. She was quiet for a long time, then whispered, We should leave. Take Andrew and go. I nodded. We will. Tonight. When Marcus returned from the park, his smile looked carved from stone. Everything okay? He asked. Fine, I said, forcing a calm tone. Monica played along, chatting about groceries and laundry, but I saw his eyes flick toward the half-packed suitcase by the hallway closet. He noticed everything. That evening I cooked his favorite meal-fried catfish and collard greens because that's what you do when you plan to disappear. You make everything look normal. We ate in silence, the tension thick as molasses. When Monica excused herself to put Andrew to bed, I followed her upstairs. Half an hour, I whispered. We'll leave through the back. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Downstairs, I could hear Marcus humming to himself. The tune was the same one he'd sung at our wedding. That small, awful detail almost broke me. How do you run from a man whose voice once made you feel safe? When I went to the kitchen to grab my purse, Marcus was standing there blocking the door. His eyes were calm, too calm. Where are you going, Ruth? He asked softly. My throat tightened. Just for air. He smiled without warmth. You won't find any out there. The air left my lungs all at once. He was standing too close, his shadow spilling across the tiles, trapping me where I stood. For a second I thought about screaming, but Andrew was asleep upstairs, and Monica was probably listening from the hallway. I couldn't risk it. Move, Marcus, I said, keeping my voice calm. You're scaring me. His smile widened. Scaring you, baby girl, you've been scared of your own shadow lately. I don't know what stories you've been making up, but I've had enough of them. Stories, I whispered. You call what I found a story. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You mean the wiring you told that plumber to dig into, the one you paid behind my back? His tone was quiet, but it carried that dangerous rhythm I knew too well, the one that came right before rage. You've been snooping, and you brought outsiders into our business. I took a step back. Our business stopped being private the moment you started lying to me. He leaned in his breath, heavy with whiskey. Lying, Ruth, everything I've done I did for this family. My laugh came out sharp and cracked. For this family, while you're on beaches with another woman, while you hide stolen money in my house, while you poison me with your vitamins. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Shock, maybe fear. Then he recovered fast. You've lost your mind, he said softly, too softly. You think I'd hurt you? You're sick, Ruth. Grief's been eating at you since David died. You just need help. His hand reached for my arm, but I jerked away. Don't you dare touch me. His expression darkened. You need to calm down. He said it like a command, not concern. Marcus, I said quietly, I know about the accounts. The fake signatures. The cameras. I know everything. His jaw tightened. You don't know a damn thing. And then he grabbed my wrist. Hard. Pain shot through my hand and I gasped, but I forced myself not to cry out. You think you can take my family away from me? He hissed. You think you can turn Monica against me? Marcus, I said, trembling, you already did that yourself. For a second, the world stopped. Then footsteps pounded down the stairs. Daddy Monica's voice. What's going on? Marcus froze his grip, loosening just enough for me to pull free. He turned, face softening instantly. Just talking to your mother, he said smoothly. She's not been herself lately. But Monica wasn't 12 anymore, and she could see the red mark on my wrist. Her face went pale. Daddy, step away from her. Something in his eyes changed, like a switch flipping. You're not talking to me like that, young lady. I said step away, she shouted. Andrew's small voice echoed from upstairs, frightened. Marcus looked between us, breathing hard. You're poisoning her mind, he said to me. Our daughter, just like you poisoned this house. And then he did something that chilled me to the bone. He smiled. You know, maybe I was wrong about those pills, he said quietly. Maybe I should have given you more. Monica moved first. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back door. Marcus lunged, grabbing for me again, but this time Monica shoved him hard. He stumbled into the counter, the coffee mug shattering beside him. "Go," she screamed. We ran out the back door, barefoot, into the cold night. The gravel cut into my feet, but I didn't stop. Monica's car was in the driveway, keys still inside. She shoved Andrew into the back seat, jumped in, and started the engine. I looked back one last time and saw Marcus standing in the doorway, his face half in shadow. "You can't run from me forever, Ruth," he shouted. But when the headlights hit his face, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not fury, not even hate. Fear, because he knew the truth was finally catching up to him. We drove through the night, the tires humming against the asphalt like a heartbeat that refused to calm down. Monica's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. In the back seat, Andrew slept clutching his stuffed bear, unaware that his mother and grandmother were running for their lives. The city lights blurred past the windshield, but my eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, half expecting Marcus's truck to appear behind us. "Where are we going?" Mama Monica's voice shook. "Do you have anywhere safe?" I nodded faintly. "The old church house near the coast, your uncle's property. He keeps it locked, but I still have the spare key." My brother's small beach cottage, quiet and forgotten since his move to Florida, suddenly felt like salvation. We reached the coast by dawn. The waves were gray and angry, crashing against the rocks like they had something to say. Monica carried Andrew inside while I locked the door behind us. The place smelled of salt and cedar untouched for years. For the first time in days, I exhaled fully. We were safe, at least for the moment. Monica paced the small living room, her voice trembling. "Mama, what do we do now? Call the police?" I hesitated. We can't just accuse him without proof. Everything he hid, he probably moved or destroyed it by now. I looked out the window, watching the pale light rise over the ocean. But I have one thing he doesn't know about. From my purse, I pulled out the envelope I had taken from his drawer, the one with the torn photograph and the fake documents. Monica stared at it like it was a snake. "Mama, we need to give that to the police right now." "We will," I said, "but not yet. There's more to uncover. I need to know how deep this goes. I need to know if David's death was really an accident." Her breath caught. "You don't think I don't know what to think anymore?" I whispered. But Marcus had the insurance papers signed within a week. Too fast, too clean. And I never saw the investigation file. Tears welled in her eyes. "Mama," I took her hands. "I'm not saying he killed our boy, but he might have made sure nothing stopped him from getting paid." We both fell silent. The weight of it pressed against our chests, heavy as the tide outside. That evening, as Monica put Andrew to bed, I sat by the window and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Eddie," my voice cracked. "It's Ruth Henderson." He hesitated. "Mrs. Henderson, are you safe?" "For now," I said. "But I need your help again. You said those wires weren't normal. Do you still have the photos?" "Yes, ma'am. I kept copies just in case." My heart lifted for the first time in days. "Can you send them to me when the photos arrived?" I stared at them on Monica's laptop. The wiring diagrams, the hidden compartments, the tampered ventilation system. It was all there, evidence of a house turned into a weapon. Monica came up behind me, covering her mouth. "Oh my God, Mama! He was trying to hurt you." I nodded slowly. Not just me. Anyone who got in his way. We drove to the local sheriff's office the next morning, clutching the file like a lifeline. I explained everything: the money, the forged signatures, the wiring, the threats. The sheriff, a patient man with tired eyes, took notes and promised to look into it. But I saw the doubt in his face. "Ma'am," he said gently, "this is serious stuff. We'll need to verify." I left the station knowing what that meant. They didn't believe me. Not yet. As we stepped outside, Monica grabbed my hand. "They'll see, Mama. We'll make them see." I nodded, but my stomach twisted. Because Marcus was a master of masks, and he'd had 40 years to perfect his performance. And if he realized I'd gone to the police, he'd come for us. 2 days passed without a word from Marcus, and that silence was worse than any threat. I barely slept, expecting his truck to appear on the horizon every time I heard tires on gravel. Monica tried to keep things normal for Andrew cartoons in the morning sandcastle walks on the beach, but even her laughter had a tremor beneath it. The ocean should have been soothing, but every crash of the waves sounded like a countdown. On the third morning, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Henderson." The voice was male, polite but unfamiliar. "This is Detective Crane from the County Police Department. We've received your report and have a few questions." My pulse quickened. "Of course, Detective. You claimed your husband installed unauthorized wiring and surveillance equipment in your home. Yes, I said firmly. And I have photos from the electrician who found them. Can you email them to me? Already sent yesterday, I said. He paused. We received them. Mrs. Henderson, we ran a search on your husband. He's been moving large sums of money between offshore accounts for years. There's also a flagged report from the insurance company regarding your son's payout possible fraud. My knees nearly gave out. You're saying we're not saying anything yet? He interrupted gently. But it looks like you were right to leave. After hanging up, I sank into the chair by the window, trembling. Monica came rushing in. What happened? I told her everything, every detail the detective had confirmed. She pressed a hand to her mouth, whispering, "Oh my God." Then quieter, he really did it. That night we left the lights on. Monica double-checked every lock before going to bed, but I couldn't rest. At around 2 a.m., a noise outside jolted me awake, the sound of tires crunching on gravel. I crept to the window and froze. A pickup truck sat at the end of the drive. Its headlights were off, but I knew that shape, that dent in the front bumper. Marcus. I shook Monica awake, whispering urgently, "He's here." Her eyes widened with terror. "What do we do?" "Stay with Andrew," I said. "I'll handle this." She grabbed my wrist. "Mama, no, I'm not running again," I said quietly. I stepped out onto the porch, my nightgown whipping in the cold wind. The truck door opened and Marcus stepped out, calm as ever, like he was coming home from work. "Ruth," he said, his voice soft, almost tender. "You shouldn't have left. You shouldn't have lied." He took a slow step closer, hands raised like he was talking to a frightened animal. "You've got it all wrong. Those documents, they're for our future. For you." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "For me, you forged my name, stole our son's money, hid cameras in my walls. You don't even know what love looks like anymore." He stopped a few feet away, eyes glinting in the porch light. "Everything I did for control," he said suddenly. "Because when David died, you broke. I couldn't lose you too." I stared at him, stunned. "You didn't protect me," I said. "You imprisoned me." For a long, awful moment, we just stood there, 40 years of marriage hanging between us like smoke. Then the sheriff's cruiser lights flashed across the drive. Marcus turned eyes wide. "You called them," he said quietly. "No," I said. "They called me." The officers surrounded him fast. He didn't resist, just watched me as they cuffed his wrists. "You'll regret this, Ruth," he murmured. "I already do," I said, voice breaking. As they led him away, his calm cracked. "You think they'll believe you? You think they'll let you keep the house?" "I don't want the house," I whispered. "I just want peace." The cruiser door slammed shut. The sound echoed over the cliffs until it faded into the ocean wind. For the first time in decades, I felt free and terrified of what that freedom might cost. The next morning, the coastal air felt different, cleaner, sharper, as if the wind itself was sweeping out the ghosts. Monica made coffee in the tiny kitchen, her movements quiet and deliberate. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The mug in my hands was warm grounding. "Do you think it's over?" she asked finally. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Men like your father don't stop fighting when they lose. They just change how they fight." Later that afternoon, Detective Crane called again. His voice was steady, but carried that tone police officers use when the truth will hurt. "Mrs. Henderson, we've finished searching your home. You were right about the wiring. It was connected to small surveillance cameras and chemical dispersal units. The lab's confirming the compounds, but preliminary analysis shows traces of sedatives and low-dose toxins." My stomach clenched. So he really was. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. "You were being poisoned slowly, likely through your ventilation system. It's consistent with the symptoms you described in your medical records. Fatigue, nausea, confusion. My breath caught. How long?" "At least 9 months, possibly longer." Monica covered her mouth, tears streaming silently. I could barely hear the detective over the pounding in my ears. And the other evidence I managed. The accounts, the forged papers, we've confirmed multiple offshore transfers under aliases that tie back to him. He'd set up a separate trust in your name that would activate upon your death. My hand trembled so hard I almost dropped the phone. "He planned everything," I whispered. When I hung up, Monica sat beside me holding my hand. "Mama," she said softly, "he could have killed you." I nodded, and he would have smiled while doing it. We cried quietly, not out of fear anymore, but mourning for the years we'd given to a man who treated love like ownership. 2 weeks later, Marcus was formally charged with attempted murder, fraud, and insurance conspiracy. The trial made local headlines. Respected contractor, accused of poisoning wife. His friends came out of the woodwork to defend him. He's a good man. He'd never hurt her. She's just confused. I sat in that courtroom every single day dressed in black, my hands folded in my lap while lawyers dissected my life as if it were a case file. Marcus never once looked ashamed. When our eyes met across the courtroom, he smiled small, deliberate, chilling. But when Eddie testified and the photos of the wiring were projected on the screen, that smile faltered. Then came the bank records, the chemical analysis, the insurance fraud. Piece by piece, the perfect mask he'd worn for decades began to crack. On the final day, Monica took the stand. Her voice shook, but her words didn't. My mother spent her whole life believing in love, forgiveness, and family, she said. My father took advantage of that. He didn't just try to kill her, he killed the woman she used to be. There wasn't a sound in that courtroom when she finished. Marcus's lawyer tried to spin the narrative that I'd misunderstood the equipment, that grief over David's death had made me paranoid, but the evidence was too heavy to lift. When the judge read the verdict guilty on all counts, Marcus finally lost that calm composure. He turned to me as they let him out, his eyes dark and hollow. You think you won, he muttered, but you'll never forget me. He was right. I wouldn't. Not because of love, but because of what he'd taught me. The cost of blind trust, the danger of silence, and the strength it takes to walk away from the life you built when it starts to rot from the inside. After the sentencing, when I stepped out of the courthouse, the air was warm, the first true spring day in months. Monica took my hand and smiled through her tears. It's over, Mama. I looked at her, at the sunlight, at the people walking freely around us, and whispered, No, baby. It's just beginning. Freedom didn't feel in the way I expected it to. It wasn't joy or relief. It was silence, the kind that follows a long storm when all that's left is wreckage. For weeks after the trial, I couldn't sleep without hearing his voice echoing through my mind, that soft baritone saying, You'll never forget me. And he was right, I didn't. The memories clung like smoke, the sound of his boots on the stairs, the smell of his cologne mixed with drywall dust, the calm rhythm of lies I once mistook for love. The lawyers said I could reclaim the house, that it was legally mine again now that the court had ruled in my favor. But the thought of walking through those walls made me sick. That place wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene that had worn my wedding ring. So I sold it. Every stick of furniture, every wall I had painted with hope, gone. With the money, I bought a small ocean view apartment 2 hours away where the air was always clean, and the horizon reminded me that distance could heal what memory tried to keep. The first morning there, I stood on the balcony with a mug of coffee, watching the sunrise cut across the waves. I expected to feel lonely, but I didn't. I felt empty in the best way. Monica and Andrew came every Sunday. He'd run down the beach chasing seagulls while Monica helped me plant flowers along the porch railing. She'd ask about my health, my appetite, my sleep. And for the first time in years, I could answer honestly, I'm fine, baby. Really fine. Sometimes, though, at night I'd catch myself reaching across the bed, expecting to feel the weight of someone beside me. Then I'd remember the hole in the wall, the forged papers, the cold hand that once held mine in church. And I'd whisper, You lost Marcus. You lost everything. The town got used to me quickly. The neighbors called me Miss Ruth, the lady who bakes too much and feeds the strays. I liked that. I liked being just a person again, not a headline, not a victim, not a wife trying to save a man who didn't want to be saved. A month after moving, a letter arrived, no return address, no name, just my own written neatly across the envelope. My heart skipped. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You were right about everything. That was all it said. No signature, but I didn't need one. I sat down slowly, staring at those words. For a moment, anger rose up again, because what good was his admission now? But then I realized it wasn't for me. It was his way of clinging to the last thread of control, reminding me he still existed somewhere behind bars, still thinking of the woman who refused to die quietly. I folded the note and slid it into the drawer. I wouldn't let him haunt me anymore. That evening I watched Andrew build a sandcastle outside my window. Grandma, he shouted. Look, it's a castle like the one in your stories. I smiled and waved. It's perfect, baby. Monica laughed beside him, and for a second I saw David in her smile. The same spark, the same warmth. The sun dipped low, painting everything gold. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, the salt air washing over me. Life wasn't simple anymore. It never would be, but it was mine. Every scar, every loss, every lesson carved into the bones of my survival had brought me here. I whispered to the wind. You tried to bury me, Marcus, but you just taught me how to grow roots. The waves answered softly, breaking against the shore like applause. And for the first time since that terrible morning when the wall cracked open, I finally believed I had survived. It's been nearly a year since the verdict, and peace no longer feels like a stranger. The days fall into rhythm now, mornings with the ocean breeze, evenings with the hum of cicadas, Sundays with the sound of my grandson's laughter echoing through the apartment. Monica always brings him early, his little feet slapping across the wooden floor, shouting, "Grandma." We brought donuts. I always pretend to be surprised. We sit together by the window overlooking the shore, 3 generations bathed in soft light. Sometimes Monica asks, "Do you ever think about him?" And I smile faintly. Not the man he became, only the one I thought he was. That's the truth. I don't hate Marcus anymore. Hate is a chain, and I carried his weight long enough. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about freeing him, it's about freeing myself. Every now and then I'll catch a headline about another woman hurt by someone she trusted. And I whisper a quiet prayer for her, because I know that kind of betrayal doesn't end when the court doors close. It lingers in the corners of every quiet room. But it fades too, piece by piece, the same way scars fade under sunlight. The town knows me now as Ruth Henderson, the woman who gardens too much and brings extra pies to church bake sales. They don't see the woman who once lived in fear. And that's how I like it. The pain doesn't define me anymore, it built me. One afternoon, while watering the small rose bush Monica and Andrew had planted for me, I noticed something glinting beneath the soil. A small silver locket. When I opened it, I saw a photo David as a child, his arms around both of us, smiling wide. It must have fallen from one of the boxes during the move. I pressed it to my chest and felt the warmth of the sun soak through my blouse. For the first time, I didn't cry. I just whispered, "We're all right now, baby." Later that evening, Monica and I watched the sunset from the balcony. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You ever regret not fighting harder for him?" she asked softly. "For Daddy?" I shook my head. There's a difference between fighting for someone and fighting to keep something that's already gone. I didn't lose him when he went to prison, Monica. I lost him the day he stopped being kind. She nodded quietly, and we sat there listening to the waves. Andrew's laughter drifted up from the beach below, pure and unburdened. That sound was my redemption. Sometimes I still dream about the house, the creak of the stairs, the hum of the vents, the hollow thud behind that wall. But in those dreams, I'm not afraid anymore. I walk through it room by room, touching each wall, opening every door. And when I reach the hole in the plaster, there's nothing inside. No money, no wires, just sunlight pouring through. It's strange how life rebuilds itself after being broken. You don't realize how much space grief occupies until peace quietly takes its place. The scars remain, but they stop screaming. They simply remind you that you lived through something that was meant to end you. Before bed each night, I light a candle for David, his photo beside it, smiling as though he knows we finally made it through. I whisper, "Thank you for watching over me, baby." Mama did what she had to do. And in that small apartment by the sea, surrounded by laughter, forgiveness, and the faint scent of roses, I finally feel what I thought I'd never feel again. Safe, alive, home.